really enjoy using images because I think they're a really good way of stimulating discussions and asking students to perhaps look at things from a different point of view. So what I'm going to try and do today is have a look at 5 different ways that I use images in the classroom and describe a little bit the kinds of activities that I might do with some examples of some of the images that I use. Okay, so let's get straight started because there's not a lot of time for this. So the first thing that I love to do with the students is the idea of using the technology that they have on them all the time. For example, I don't know about in your teaching context, but certainly in my teaching context, they all have phones. So phones all have cameras on them, so I ask them to take photos of things. So one way that you can use this in class is to ask them to, between one class and the next class, take a photo of something that they did. And then when they come back to class the next week, they show everybody the photo that they've taken on their phone and talk about what they did and what the photo shows and so on. So like a homework activity, but quite a personal photo, homework activity where they get to bring something that's happened to them between one class and the next class into the classroom, and to actually talk about it and present it a little bit. So it really motivates them to speak. You could give them more specific input for that. You could ask them to take a photo of something that's important to them. For example, this is a really nice activity to do when you're still getting to know your students at the beginning of the year. So you might send them away after the first class and say, before you come back to next class, I want you to take a photo of something that's important to you for some reason. And then when they come into the next class, you can ask them to show the class the photo that they took and explain what it is and why it's important. Or perhaps you could get the other students to ask questions to try and find out why that particular thing is important to the student. So you could use it as a kind of presentation activity like a show and tell, or you could use it to generate interest and generate questions and get them asking each other things about themselves. Even if they know each other well, sometimes they can take photos of things that perhaps the other students are surprised by. We don't always know everything about our friends or our classmates, you know, so if they're students who spend all day together and have known each other for some time, it can still be an activity that really works quite well in the classroom. Another idea with mobile phones and taking photos that I really like using is an idea that that I stole. Most of my ideas I steal from someone, and I stole this one from Kerry Jones years and years ago, and she likes to take close-up pictures. Perhaps of shadows on the ground or a close-up of something, and you can play a lot with that kind of close-up idea where it's not clear what the photo is or what the photo shows, and we'll have a look a little bit more about that idea in one of the other activities that I'm going to talk about today. So if they take a photo which is a close-up and the other students perhaps have to ask questions or try and guess what it might be, then you can use the photos that they take, whether it's a personal photo or something that's important to them or a close-up or something like that, and extend the activity a little bit further by asking them to make up stories or about the other classmates' photos. So not their own photo because they already know the story behind that one, but perhaps creating a story or creating a dialogue or something like that based on one of the other photos that they've seen in the class. So you can kind of extend that. You can use your own imaginations to think about how you might extend that activity some more. And I was just listening to Maria's presentation in the last slot. And one of the activities that Maria talked about was she had a link in her slide where there were photos and listenings, and the students had to listen and match the descriptions. And I thought perhaps if you do a listening in class or perhaps a reading in class, then you could ask the students to go home and before the next class take a photo of something that is in some way linked to something that you've already done in class. Okay, so they're using their own technology to take photos of things outside the classroom and bringing those into the classroom as a way of generating interest or generating something to talk about or something to work with from there. Okay, so that's my first idea. This next idea is, I love these pictures. There's lots of different ones. This is one of my favorite ones. It generates lots of different ideas in the classroom, lots of different discussion in the classroom. And the idea of the activity is to guess the context. Now, I've taken this, this particular picture is from a blog by a teacher that I follow, and I think is a very creative teacher, and the blog is called The Teacher James. I'll share the links in the chat at the end of the talk when we're doing questions, because I've got those links that you can have a look for yourselves. But I put an image up, perhaps using the projector, or if I haven't got a projector in the class, I might print it out and show it to the students. And then you can ask them all sorts of questions. Oh, fantastic, great. I'm going to miss it though because I'm not available. But thank you to Teacher James for, for lending me all your ideas so that I can talk about them. So in this one, this is a lovely picture, and the questions I might ask the students. Well, what kinds of questions would you ask the students? Let's see what kinds of things you come up with. What kinds of questions would you ask your students about this picture? So they have to kind of hypothesize, guess what's happening in the picture. What kinds of things? You've seen this picture before. They're not students. They're not students, but it's very close. Is it a hospital? Okay. Don't ask me what kind of questions would you ask your students in order to get them thinking. So you might ask them things like, for example, who are the people? Thank you, Dora. Who are the people and what are they doing? Are they trying to get in or trying to get out? What do you think? Right? So excellent questions in the chat here. Where are they? What country is this? Why do you think that's that country and not a different country? Why are there no women? Very good question. Why are there no women? Who's inside the building? And who are the people who are outside? What's the relationship between the people inside and the people outside? Okay, so there's lots of different questions you could ask. You might even get your students to generate the questions, like I'm getting you to generate questions now. If I'm getting my students to generate questions, sometimes if they're a lower level, I might give them a question matrix with question words on one side and verbs along the other. So it would be what, where, who, why, and so on, and then is, does, has. And they can use those to start to generate some questions themselves to ask each other. Do you want me to tell you the story of the picture? It does have a story. Are there women inside the building? Of course, of course. Okay, well, apparently this picture was taken, I think, in India, or certainly in Asia somewhere, and the building is actually a school, not a hospital. It's a school, and inside the building, the students are taking an exam. And it looks like they're escaping from prison, doesn't it? It looks like they're trying to get in, which is very unusual. So the students inside the building are taking an exam, and these people we can see outside the building are the parents of the students who are passing notes through the window to help their children get good scores in the exams. Okay, that's the story behind the picture. And again, I would recommend Teacher James's blog for lots of ideas with pictures like this and questions that you can ask to develop that kind of questioning attitude and that kind of curiosity to find out more. Okay, how could you extend this? What kinds of other things could you then do? Perhaps you could role play the situation. Perhaps you could write some rules for parents who are trying to help their children to cheat. I mean, there's all sorts of ideas that you could come up with. Okay, so it's a great way to start a class and to get the students speaking. And the answers, okay, there is an answer, there is a context for the picture, but it's a nice activity because all the answers that they give are valid. There's no right or wrong answers here. So anything that they say is a good thing to say. So it, you know, it kind of encourages them to speak as well. You see this every day, okay. Yes, when I was cheating in exams, I didn't quite do it so obviously as this, I think. Anyway, let's move on. Let's not talk about cheating. So the next activity, well, this is not the next activity. This is a similar kind of thing. This is guessing the context. And again, this is from Kerry Jones's blog, which again, I'll post the link afterwards. And I saw Kerry Jones talk about this at a conference many years ago, probably 10 years ago now. And I just really like the activity, and I've used it lots and lots of times with my students. Yes, Sonia, it's Cadiz, because Kerry lives in Cadiz. And the idea is that this is a picture. What does the picture show? Is it the sky? Tiles, okay, it's the pavement, well done. It's the pavement, okay, and you can ask some questions about, okay, you can't see very much of what's going on in the street around, but you can deduce some things about what's happening around just from the picture. For example, it's actually just a normal pavement. There are trees above, exactly, it's autumn, well done. It's fall. What's the season? Exactly. These are the questions I would ask. What's the season? How do you know? Is it a sunny day or a rainy day? How do you know? Okay, so the picture itself, although it doesn't show us very much, it gives us lots of information. It's not windy, well done. It's a sunny autumn day, well done. Changes in life, my goodness, that's a great way to extend this one. So the reason that we know it's a sunny day is because of the shadows from the trees, and you can see that the shadows are in the kind of a pattern of a tree, and there's a fallen leaf on the ground, so it's probably a sunny autumn day. And then what I ask the students to do is I ask them to imagine, okay, this is you looking down at the ground and taking the photo with your camera. Now I want you to, in your imagination, look up and look around and tell your partner, what can you see? And they start to generate ideas about what's going on around the picture. So they're using the picture as a starting point to generate ideas about what else they can see in this context. It may be windy. It's raining cats and dogs in Sfax, okay. So they start to generate ideas, and then we share the ideas together. So they might say things like, I can see some people walking. And I say, well, who are they? Describe the people. Are they walking on their own? Are they walking together? Are they speaking? Are they happy or are they sad? Describe them. So I ask them questions to get as much detail as possible. And again, all of the answers that they give are valid and relevant because they're their own personal answers, and it doesn't matter. There is no right answer. And then I get them to imagine that, okay, usually they suggest, excuse me, usually they suggest that there's some people sitting at a table having a drink. I'm just going to drink some water. And so I get them to imagine, I say, okay, who are these people? Let's give them some names. Can you describe them? What are their jobs? And so on. And I say, okay, the group of people are making plans for tomorrow. And I want you to role play the dialogue that they're having between them, okay, with the characters that they've generated. And if you do this with older teenagers, they come up with some amazing characters, some really great people, and really unlikely people to be sitting together. So it's really quite interesting for them to then generate dialogues based around these people that they've imagined. So that's a really nice way of extending this kind of activity. And then you could get them to take pictures, again, going back to the first activity idea for their homework, take a picture of the ground somewhere where you've walked this week and show us the picture, you know. So let's move on to activity number 3. I'm keeping a close eye on time. This one we've seen already today, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We've actually seen it twice, I think. I think Carol was talking about it in the opening plenary, and also I think Joan mentioned it. This is part of the Harvard Project Zero visible thinking routines, and it's called See, Think, Wonder. So you can use this with any picture or any kind of visual stimulus, and you ask the student simply to say, what can you see? What can you see in this picture? A flood. What else can you see though? There's not just a flood, there's more things there. So you go into the detail, houses, some trees, a balcony, some windows. What colours can you see? I can see yellow, I can see black, okay? So you elicit everything that they can see, and then you ask them, well, what do you think? A river passing by and bursting its banks, I think. So what do you think about the picture? I think there's been a flood, for example. What else do you think? It's horrible. I think it's pretty horrible too. I would not like to live in one of those houses. Sadness, good. Okay, so the students come up with all sorts of ideas about what they think. And then what do you wonder? Yeah, danger. Absolutely. What do you wonder? And you might need to give them a little bit of language for this if they're lower level students. I wonder if, I wonder why, I wonder who, I wonder how. Okay. So this is where you start to think about, well, what happened before the picture and what will happen after the picture. You give it a little bit more context. So it's a very simple thinking routine that helps the students think more deeply about pictures that they're seeing. Okay, where the people are, exactly. I wonder where the people are. Hopefully not still in their houses. I wonder where I left my bike. Fantastic, yes. Wherever you left it, it's probably not there anymore, Mike. I wonder where it is. I wonder if it's winter time. I wonder if it's a tsunami. I wonder which country it could be. I wonder if there were any cars on the street before the flood happened. I wonder how long the flood disrupted people's lives for. And then again, you can extend it and do more activities. You could ask them to write a newspaper report about it, for example. So this is quite a nice picture to do that with, because there's lots of things to think and wonder with this picture. But you can do it with all sorts of simple images as well, or you could, if you're going to use a video in class, like Maria was talking about in the previous presentation, you could freeze frame and do a screenshot and get them to see, think and wonder as a pre-watching activity about the video that they're about to watch, for example. Okay. So I'm going to move on. So this is another one also from Teacher James. So I'm hoping he's not going to be talking about all of these tomorrow. So I really like this idea. These are just some examples and you can find lots more. I show the students some of these. That's a slightly different way of using images. In this case, they're images made from words rather than images like photo images. And I really like them because the words are written in a way that somehow illustrates the meaning of the word. So you can see some examples here. These are some that I really particularly like. Okay, so I show them to the students and I ask them to talk about them. Well, how does this image, why does that show the meaning of the word? And they go, oh, look, because, you know, in Spider-Man, he hangs upside down, so the M is upside down. And in Horizon, that's the sun going down and the moon coming up, or the sun going up and the moon going down or something. So they think about it and they have a look at the pictures. And it's a very simple, yes, the X is running away. And if you look at the eye, it looks like a door. So it's going out through the exit, right? I really like them. They're very simple, but very effective, I think. Very impactful. And what I like to do with this activity is maybe give them, I use images quite a lot for starters at the beginning of the class. And so I might put one or two up at the beginning of the class and just get them to talk about them. And then quite often if we're doing a reading or a listening or just been working through the book, every now and again I'll ask them to choose 5 words or 10 words and add them to their new vocabulary list and write a definition or draw a picture or write a translation, however they want to try and remember them. And so sometimes I get them to then have a look at their vocabulary list that we might have been building up since the beginning of term, so there might be quite a few different words on there, and give them a blank piece of paper and get them to create their own images from words. So have a look at the word, think about how you could illustrate the meaning of the word using the letters that you have in the word or something like that. And they come up with some really lovely examples. So it's a really nice stimulus for using images, but using images to help us learn vocabulary and help fix vocabulary in our minds. When they create their own images from the vocabulary that they're learning, it helps to fix them in their minds better. And then we can display them around the classroom. And the students will go and look at each other's and they'll say, oh, that's really clever, I really like that one. It helps them to remember the word later on. So I really like using those kinds of ideas. And I'm just going to go on to the last one now. This again, I'm going back to Kerry again now, Kerry Jones. This is a photo collage. And I'm not going to tell you. What do all the photos have in common? Any ideas? Anyone who knows me vaguely will probably guess this very quickly. Very good, Helen. Anybody get more local than Spain? Do you know which city this might be in Spain? Very good. It's Bilbao. It's the city that's closest to where I live. I don't actually live in the city of Bilbao, but I live not far out. And many of the students I teach live perhaps in the outskirts of Bilbao or in small towns just outside Bilbao. So I would show them this at the beginning of the class, and I would say, well, what can you see in each picture? So we can see, for example, in the first picture, we can see the Guggenheim Museum, which is a very iconic building in Bilbao. The second picture is an old wine warehouse called the Alhóndiga. And what you're looking at, it's like when you're inside it, this is taken from inside, but there's like brick buildings, separate brick buildings within it, and it's got some amazing columns. Every column has a different design. And if you look up in the picture at the top there, you're looking at the floor of a swimming pool. So as you look up, you can watch people swimming past overhead. It's quite an unusual thing to be looking at. And then there's a church. It's San Anton, I think, which is in the old town in Bilbao. There's the Puppy, which is a sculpture made of flowers just outside the Guggenheim. There's the Arriaga Theatre. There's the Iberdrola building. Iberdrola is an electricity company in Spain, and that's their main head office, which is in Bilbao. There's the football stadium. Football's very important to people in Bilbao. There's a metro station. The metro, again, has quite a modern design and is quite distinctive. The next picture shows the fireworks. During the fiestas in the summer, they have fireworks every night. It's quite a big thing. And the final picture shows the metro entrance, which again is quite distinctive from Bilbao. And what I would do with this activity is to ask the students to think about their own local neighbourhood, and with a partner, decide what pictures they would take of what things they would take pictures of to represent their own local neighbourhood. So if I'm doing this in the centre of Bilbao, and I know my students are all from Bilbao, then I'll choose a different city as the example, and then they would come up with different ideas. But if they're from the outskirts, I'll say, well, what's your local neighbourhood? What's your little suburb called? And what things are representative of your suburb? And they have to talk together and think of maybe, here we've got 10 different ideas, maybe 6 different ideas that they could take pictures of. And they come up with some really lovely ideas. There's a town which is about 30 kilometres out of Bilbao where I teach, and the students, it's called Falla, and the students told me that one of the groups of students told me they would take a picture of purple onions, salad onions, you know, the ones that are purple. And I said, but why would you take a picture of purple onions? And they said, our town is famous for purple onions, which I never knew. So they come up with some really nice ideas, and then they have to present their ideas to the rest of the class, and then again you could ask them to go out and actually take the pictures and make the collage and you know, decorate the classroom or the corridors, or you could give them a different theme. I mean, that's a theme based on the town where they live, but you might want to ask them to do something that's more personal to them, so a hobby that they like to do, or their favourite books and films, or you could get them to do a photo collage with all the things that are important to them. So a place that's important to them, a person that's important to them, their favourite food, a hobby that they do, their favourite book or film or something like that, you know, and get them to do a more personalised photo collage. And again, we're going back to the kind of original idea. Yeah, their family members, for example. And then they present them to each other. So those are my 5 ideas. I also love using memes in the classroom, but I haven't put that in the presentation today. I think memes are another very nice way, certainly with upper secondary students, to work with images in the classroom. So we might have a meme that's somehow connected with the topic of what we're talking about in the class, or something like that. And then I might ask them to generate their own meme. So at the end of the class, okay, make a meme that reflects on what we've been doing in the class today, or reflects on the unit that we've been working on at the moment, or something silly that was said during the class, or something like that. Okay, so memes are another really nice way. There's my timer. Memes are another really nice way, I think, of introducing images into the classroom and working with images and personalising them. So that's me with time up. So I'm now going to say thank you very much to YLTSIG for asking me to speak and allowing me to speak. And there's my email address there if you want me to send the slides, but also I'm sure that I can send them to the YLTSIG. any questions, please do type them in the chat. Thank you, Marie. I didn't quite manage to say as many good ideas as you did in your presentation. Thank you. Any questions about the images or the ways that you can extend them or use them in the classroom? Great, thank you. Wonderful. I use, what's the meme generator? It's a free one, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'm going to actually, while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions, I'll post those links as well. So the teacher James, who's speaking tomorrow, I'm sure he'll put his own link on, but I'll put it in there anyway. This one. And then the other one is Harry Jones's blog, which is called Close Up, which is great for ideas for things to do with teenagers in the classroom as well. Yeah, where can we find inspiring photos? I think you need to be on social media. That's where I find them all. People share things on social media a lot that kind of memes in particular, but all sorts of other inspiring photos that we can
Okay, use. Any final questions?
Oh, Isabel, I'm glad that you remember me from last Saturday. Thank you. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions, so thank you, Isabel. Well, I hope to see you again.
But I think they're just writing nice things. Yeah. Great. Great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for that session. That was really enjoyable, and I mean, so many good ideas, you know, using a photo collage, using the words that represent the meaning of them, of the words. And also I think when you started the presentation, just looking at like really just one image and really mining that for use in the language classroom, which I think, you know, the comments in the chat box speak for themselves. I mean, it's really quite inspiring, really, in what you can do with just an image. So thank you very much. Now we're going to have a 10-minute break before we come back for the closing plenary of the day. So thank you very much, and see you in about 10 minutes.